Okay, I'm going to, as we get settled, I'm going to start the learning sponsors. Keep getting messages from my minyanim in Israel too on WhatsApp. You know, I told you I go in the evening to a mincha marav that's Edot HaMizrach, Nusach Sfard. Right? So I've learned to daven.
But that Nusach Sfard or Minik Sfard? Real Sfardim or?
Believe me, they're real Sfard.
Then it's Minik.
I'm one of the only Ashkenazim there davening. Okay.
But is it what we call Nusach Sfard? It's probably Minik Sfard.
It's Minig Sfard. Everything.
Which is totally different.
Right. I felt like I was in a different planet the first week or two.
I once was asked to bench at a house.
Oh,
sure, I'll bench. And it gives me a bencher in this, except for the chasimas of the brachas, nothing is the same.
Right. Morning, Bob.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey. I'm starting the year of learning. Friends of Leonie Meisem and Leah Sabra Baschonov Zindel, friends of Melaskotsky, Moshe Zelig Ben Mordechai, Martin Lipman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pinchas, friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev, friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, friends of Gideon Lozinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef Cohen, those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka, but Meshulam Yisachar. Have a month of learning by Malki and Rabbi Dr. Yankee Honig in memory of her father, Yosef Ben Yechezkel Yehuda, Marsha Federbush in memory of her husband, Oriel Pinchas Ben Harav Shimon, Gary and Marsha Schrager in memory of his parents, Freda Bat Hendel and David Ben Yosef, Andrea and David Dolney in memory of her father, Tzvi Hirsch Hillel Ben Avraham. We have a week of learning by Marsha Federbush in memory of her mother, Chaya Elka Bat Moshe Akiva, Shelley and Oscar Mole in memory of her father, Shlomo Ruven Ben Binyamin, Tzipora Goldstein in memory of her husband, Aryeh Yehuda Ben Moshe Shmuel, Barbara Stern in memory of her mother, Hazel Bat Yosef Shmuel. Today we have also a day of learning by Gail and Milton Miller, in memory of her father, Ayele Ben Tzvi Hirsch, and by Sharon and David Carpel, in memory of her father, Chaim Shmuel Ben Meshulam Feivish. May the Shemas have an Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Vet the Yeshua Shem Latzmiah, and L'chol B'nai Israel, a good Gabench. Amen. Okay. So I want to point out again that the discussion in the Gemara to date, some might want to call it grammatical, some might want to call it folk literary. Okay, there's a variety of ways, and that's why, again, some people raise the question whether this is actually part of the original Gemara, okay, or whether this was a piece that was added on later by the Saboraim. Okay, right now, we are going to pick up towards the next to the last line on Bet, Amud Bet, right? Where we see that there has been an extensive discussion on the use of the term drachim versus the use of the word dvarim. Okay, check in. Did Ruvain meet with you yesterday or not?
Ruben was here yesterday.
He was here yesterday.
Busy with
his great-grandchildren, I know. Okay. He was telling me that they have 6 girls.
6 girls.
Kenahara.
This guy better have a big bank.
The next girl will be Batsheva.
What?
No, seriously, I know somebody.
They were very often.
Yeah, 7. This guy Aaron, I know from Flatbush. He's had 7 kids. The seventh one is called Bat Sheva.
Well, my son.
That's
also
good if
has-
it's a
has
girl.
7 kids. Here,
I think
this
he has
guy
4
has
8
daughters.
kids, yes. 8 kids, 7 of them girls. Seventh kid is called Bat Sheva. That's right.
As long as it was a
my
girl,
son
it's
also
okay, right?
I think you're all okay.
On the
Okay.
other hand, the Kala, my grandson just married. She was the 4th kid, and she's named Batsheva.
There's a name for somebody.
So
Right.
so you're.
Yes, right. That's good. Okay. So what happens then? We saw that the Gemara keeps raising a question on language for the moment, and then saying, well, why this language as opposed to that language? Why this term as opposed to that term? Okay. And in this case, the Gemara has recently brought us a pasuk where it tried to raise this question. And now it's going to bring another example as we pick up, as I say, on Bet, Amud Bet, the next to the last line. Okay? Vahatnan. But what about the fact that it was taught elsewhere in the Mishnah? Ve'etrog shaveh le'ilan b'shlosha drachim. Okay? That we have a Mishnah that teaches that the etrog is similar to a tree in 3, let's call it for the moment, ways. All right? But the rest of the Mishnah said, and in one way, it is similar to a vegetable. Okay? So what happens? Litnei dvarim, says the Gemara. So why are they using the word here, drachim? Okay, why couldn't they use the word again, dvarim, asks the Gemara. Mishum deba'inin matnei seifa, answers the Gemara, because they have to want to teach what comes about afterwards, the later part of the Mishnah. Okay, that as I cited, that it refers to the fact that in one way it's going to be like a vegetable, right? Namely, uliyerek b'derech echad, and that's the end. And there clearly they use the word derech there. So the argument that's why they use the word drachim in the Reisha, in the first part of the Mishnah, right? Sefer nami mitnei davars, claims the Gemara. If that's the case, I could have argued the same thing, okay, and use the word davar there likewise as well. Instead of using drachim as ways, in one aspect, I'll use aspect for a translation for the moment, of devarim. In 3 aspects, they're like this. In one aspect, davar, they're like that. Okay? So we go now to today's daf, okay, which is Gimel Amud Aleph. Okay? And we're going to, in an attempt to see a explanation, okay, of the situation. Okay? What happens? Hatam, there, hakamashmalan. There it comes to teach us with the example of the etrog. That's the there example. Dirache, dirache, right? The darchehad, the etrog, kiyerek. That perhaps we're going to say that one example of the ways of that a etrog is like a vegetable, right? Namely, here's the example. Mayerek darko legadel al kol mayim. The same way that a vegetable is able to be grown, okay, on various means, I'm going to use that for the moment, of watering. In other words, whether it's rain or irrigation.
Or river water.
Or river, well, that would be irrigation.
Sometimes, like in Egypt, it overflows.
Yeah. Yeah, that's called irrigation. Okay, okay, and what happens? Ubisha'at likitato isuro, and therefore, as a result of that, okay, that at the time of its, let's call likitato here, gathering, harvesting, picking, all right, isuro, that's when we have to take its tithe, its maaser. Af etrog, darko ligadel al kol mayim. So likewise, an etrog is able to grow through any kinds of watering, both rain or irrigation. Ubashat likitato isuro, and at the time of its picking, its harvesting, okay, that's when the maaser is done regarding the etrog. Okay, but the Gemara raises the question now. Vahaditznan, okay, right? So we have this difference between rain, okay, which is seasonal, and that's what the item is, versus irrigation, which is really no fixed growth period.
The trees, the miser is dated from the first blossoms.
Right.
The srogim, the miser is dated
From
the
the harvest. Right, that's Lakitato. Right.
Yeah, but it's only when
That's
you
the point.
ultimately
That's why it's one is seasonal and one is not. Okay, so Vahaditznan. But what about the fact that we have again a Mishnah that teaches as follows? And we're going to give another example. And here we'll take a moment to talk about a koi, namely koi yesh bo drachim shava lechaya. The animal known as a koi has some ways in which it's similar to a non-domesticated animal. V'yesh bo drachim shava lebehema. And there are some ways in which it is similar to a domesticated animal. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go into the whole discussion about the koi, but just a quick reference. Some want to suggest the koi is like a wild oxen. Others want to say it's a crossbreed animal between a deer and a goat. Okay? There are certain things, for example, that we need to understand about the koi. For example, shechita is required.
Well,
That's what it's going to go into, right? That's what I'm just introducing the next piece. All right? The question of kisui hadam, when the animal is slaughtered, okay? And the question of the chalev of the animal. So now the Gemara is going to discuss some of these items to point out how is it that there are some ways that the koi is like non-domestic animal? How is it some way like a domestic animal? Okay, that's what we're going to see. So that's what it started out. There are ways in which it's like non-domestic, wild animal and non-domestic. There are ways in which it is like a domestic. V'yesh bo drachim shave lechaya ulebehema. And there are some ways where it is similar to both domestic and non-domestic, right? And that would be the example of shechita, right? V'yesh bo drachim she'eno shaveh lo lechaya v'lo lebehema. And there are ways in which it is no ways in which it is neither like a wild or non-domestic animal or a domesticated animal. Okay. So again, then we could talk about whether the blood has to be covered when it's slaughtered and all of these things.
That's what yes for a koi.
Okay, right. So the point I'm simply saying is the Gemara is citing this again as another example of how come the word drachim is used as opposed to the word dvarim. Okay, that's our significance here. So the Gemara asks, nitnei dvarim. So let's teach this using the term dvarim instead of drachim. V'tu haditnan. And furthermore, again, we have an example that in a Mishnah that teaches, zo echat min hadrachim sheshavu gitei nashim l'shichrurei avadim. So we have another Mishnah that we bring again, going to bring the same question about the use of the term drachim, that this is among the ways in which the get for a woman as a divorce is similar to a document of manumission for a servant. Okay? Nitnei dvarim. Again, we suggest, why couldn't the text have used the word dvarim instead of the word drachim? Ella. Okay, rather, what happens? So we're going to give now an attempted explanation. Kol hecha deika plugta, where there is, and I'm going to translate the word plugta here as differentiation, okay, or distinction, and not argument. Okay? And by the way, if you want to see that, you can look at Rashi halfway down the page, where he says, Chiluk b'derachav, b'derech zo, hi domeh lekan, u'b'derech zo, eino domeh, kegon matnitin b'shlosha, etc. Okay? So it's Rashi who brings that particular explanation that it's a differentiation, or a distinction. Okay, so what happens? Okay, so let's go back now. Okay, right, so kol heicha deika plugta tane drachim. That's where they use the terminology of the word drachim, suggests this explanation of the world. The kol heicha deleka plugta, and where there is no distinction or differentiation, tane dvarim, then they could teach the word dvarim. However, hold on a second. Gemara doesn't stop there. Daikanami, and we can deduce this as follows.
From the text.
Okay, namely, the Katani Sefer, as was taught at the end of our text, Rabbi Elazar Omer, etrog shavel ilan, lechol davar, that Rabbi Elazar, who did not think that there was a distinction or differentiation here, holds that the etrog is more like a tree. Okay, shmamina, and that's how we.
The word davar.
And he uses the word davar. That's how we see the attempt to rationalize. There's only one problem with that, and we had that in one of the sources, which was when the Gemara told us that I'm looking for it. B'sheva drachim bodkim et hazav. And yet you have to go into a long discussion to say how come, based on this rationale, how come they use the word drachim there, but with regard to zav?
This is not.
Because the issue has to be between a zav and a zava. That's one explanation.
But with regard to a zav, there's no.
Right.
There's no.
Okay. Okay, so let's go on. So the Gemara picks up now. Minyana de Resha lema'ute mai. Okay, that the number the number or specific.
Number 3.
Okay, number being used there at our Mishnah. Okay, is to limit what? Minyana de Sefer lema'ute mai, or a number again in regards to the later part of the Mishnah is to limit what? Minyana de Resha lema'ute chuppah. Okay, that the fact that we have a number 3 spells out that that's to exclude chuppah as a means of kiddushin. Okay, okay. Ula Rav Huna. However, for Rav Huna, the Amar chuppah koneh mikal v'chomer. Okay, but he, however, includes chuppah as a means for kiddushin based on a kal v'chomer. Namely, if all of these, if chuppah can be used for a nisuin, okay, why couldn't it all the more so that it should be able to be used for a kiddushin? That would be his argument, right? Lema'ute mai. So what does it then come to eliminate? Lema'ute chalifin, to exclude the issue of a chalifin, a kind of I don't want to use the word exchange, but it's a kind of acquisition that is done without solid material items always.
A substitute item that has no value.
Right, that's right. Okay, Salka da'atcha amina. It's possible I might have thought, Ho'il v'gamar kicha kicha misadeh Ephraim, since they learned that the that a kicha vayikach was a kinyan, and that applied to property, and you can use chalifin with regards to property, right? Ma sadeh miknaya b'chalifin. The same way property can be acquired through chalifin, through an exchange. Let's put it that way, without something of tangible value. Af isha nami makneya b'chalifin. So likewise, maybe a woman can be acquired through an exchange of something that has no value. But what happens? Kamash Malan comes to teach us that's not the case. No woman in her right mind would be willing to be Makadesh with something of no value.
It's not halachically accepted.
It's not right. Ve'ema hachinami. So I would say, how can you say that there's a parallel here? Chalifin idnehu b'pachot meshave pruta. Okay, that's what we're going to see. With regards to chalifin, you could use it for sadeh, and it does not have to be equal to a shava pruta. V'isha b'pachot meshave pruta, with a woman you're receiving something less than a shava pruta, and we go on. Lo miknaye nafsha. She would never allow herself to be betrothed. I'll use that word for the moment with something like that. Minyana the sefer. Well, what about our second clause? Right, where it said two ways that she can gain her independence again. Minyana de sefer lema'ute mai. Okay, what happens then? Lema'ute chalitza. Okay, that comes to exclude chalitza. Why is that? Salkadat chamina. I would have thought possible. Tite bekal v'chomer miyabama. Learn it from a kal v'chomer in regards to yabama. If a yabama is able to be released, I'll use that term for the moment, through chalitza, then certainly in general woman, okay, and the get right doesn't apply to her. Certainly, it should apply to a regular woman. Ma yibama she'ena yotz'a baget. That's what the Gemara is telling us next. That since yibama only has the one venue, or actually she has two, because she has the chalitza as well as the death. What? The death of the brother-in-law. Right? Right? She'ena yotz'a baget, but she does not gain her independence through the document of a get. Yotz'a b'chalitza. She goes out with the chalitza. Zo sheyotza beget, one who is able to gain her independence again through a document of a get. Eino din sheyotza bechalitza. Should it not be viable that then an act, which is even stronger than a document, okay, should that not then release her to her independence? Kamash malan comes to teach us that's not the case. So again, I ask, ve'ema hachanami, are you really saying it's possible that these are comparable? Amar kra, because we have a pasuk that tells us, sefer kritut, that there must be a document of separation. Sefer korta, okay? It is a document that makes severance, right? Ve'en davar acher korta, and no other item, okay, accomplishes complete severance. Okay, now an interesting point. The shiur I listened to for preparation wants to suggest that maybe if we take the view that the Saboraim added this whole grammatic and literary section here, then the argument by some Rishonim, okay, and that's where he based the supposition, suggests that this is where the quote original, if I can use that term, or older Gemara started at this point. Okay, I am just sharing that thought with you. All right, as we continue. All right, because remember that said in our Mishnah at the very outset, after it said, right, nikneit b'shlosha dvarim, right, nikneit kesef ben shtar ben bia. So now it's dealing with what I'll suggest, not the literary or grammatical, but the content and the context of the Gemara. But kesef, all right, what are we talking about? The question of why kesef works. Minalan, on what basis is it? V'tu, and furthermore, v'haditznan, but don't we have a Mishnah that teaches as follows? Ha'av zakai b'bito b'kiddusheha, that the father is the one who merits receiving the money from
the contract.
Okay, well, let's talk about the money because that's what the Gemara is focusing on. Okay, for this betrothal. Okay, But, says the Gemara, bekesef, bishtar, ubabiyah. But our Mishnah gave us three methods for kiddushin, not just money. So the fact that you say that the father gets the money, but you have other situations where the father is less involved. Okay? Minalan, based on what? The miknai bekesef. Why? Because it's able to acquire her through money. V'kesef du'avuahu. And do we say then that the money actually belongs to the father? Oh, yes, we're going to in a moment. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Says Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, who's now going to try to come up with an explanation why the father should be the one who receives the money and not the girl in regards to the
Naira.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, all right, to get to, and not the young woman who's being betrothed. Okay, Ted.
Up to this point, that was sort of any one of the
It is.
That's what
You're right.
eventually the Gemara is going to get there. Okay, right, but right now, because the Mishnah listed Kesef, Shtar, and Bia, it's got to examine it in that order, right? All right, okay. So what happens? So what does he say? The Amar Kra. Why? He's suggesting that the father gets the money. V'yatsa chinam ein kasef. Because we have a pasuk that says in regards to a certain situation, right? She goes basically free, no money. Ein kesef la'adon zeh. Then when there's no money for the master, aval yesh kesef la'adon acher. But there is money going to another, a different master, so to speak. I use that term. And who's her master? When she is a young girl, when she's a ketana, her father is clearly her master, okay? And therefore, that's his argument as to why the father would get the money, okay? For the kiddushi. Umanihu, okay? Umanihu, Av. And who else would that be? Av, it would be the father, right? So the Gemara raises the point. Ve'ema, ledida hachihashta, okay? Ve'ema ledida. I would say it should go to her. Hachihashta. How is that the same? Is that really? Aviha mikabel kiddusha. That's the father who receives, who in other words, I'm going to use the word also negotiates here, her betrothal. Dichtiv, why? Because we have a pasuk again that says, Et biti natati leish hazeh. Okay? My daughter I give to this man. So the father then has the, I'm going to use the word in quotes, the right, okay, to give the daughter to anyone whom he chooses, based on the pasuk. Okay, he could give them to a handsome prince, or he could give her to a no goodnik. Okay.
Well, it's usually an old man.
Well, depends. Okay. All right. All right. I didn't want to go with old man because we had that example in the Gemara of a niece marrying an uncle, and you'd usually have a fair age. Yes, I'm saying, but there usually is, it may be a significant age distinction there.
You have a large family. A man has 10 kids. The last one, the youngest of one married the older of the other. My father, he had nieces and nephews only a couple of years younger than me.
Okay. So what happens?
You tell the mother at an Orthodox wedding.
She's the one that.
The mother is pregnant.
Right. Okay. So let's finish up. Ve'ihi. What?
Majority of people feel so, but the mother was pregnant, she does not walk her daughter to the hookah.
That is a minute. You're right.
Right? Ve'ihi shakla kaspa. But maybe then she should be the one who gets the money. Ve'ema, and I would say here, hani mili ktana. I would say, well, maybe we're talking about the example of a girl that's a minor. Delete la yad lekabel kiddushin,
Yes, no,
because she doesn't have the capability to deal,
make a transaction.
okay, to not just to do transaction, to handle the money, to keep it, to supervise it, everything, etc. Aval na'ara. But if I'm talking about a girl that's, let's
12.
say, 12, right? De'id layad lekabel kiddushin, that she has the legal power to enact kiddushin, as well as ideally the mental capacity to, to handle the money. Okay? Takdish ihi nafsha, that she should be allowed to be able to arrange betrothal on her own. Vatishkol kaspa, and she should be able to keep the money. What happens? So therefore, we were coming up with a different explanation. Amar kra, we have a pasuk. B'neureha beit aviha, in her, let's say, I'm going to use the word youth here for the moment. Okay, and right, the house of her father. Okay,
Even though she's mature,
right,
still
she's
lives
still within the domain,
of
let's
her
use that
for
word,
the next 6
okay,
months.
of her father. And ma'aseh yadeha, and any handiwork that she does at that time, belongs to her father.
Babysitting money.
Okay, well, so what happens, right? So now we have, and the Gemara tells us that, kol shevach neurim le'aviha, that any benefit, okay, that she gets, like, right, goes to the father. Ve'elaha da'amar Rav Huna. But rather, what about what was said by Rav Huna? Amar Rav, in the name of Rav. Minayin shema'aseh habat la'av. How do we know that the handiwork for the moment, the produce, the earnings of the daughter go to the father? Shana Amar, as it says, v'chiyim kor ish et bito la'ama. Okay, that if the father is by necessity sells his daughter as a servant, ma'ama ma'aseh yadeha l'rabba, the same way that the earnings of the servant belong to her master. Okay, afbat nami ma'aseh yadeha la'aviha. So likewise, the daughter, her earnings belong to her father. Tepukla, okay, so tepukle, so we derive it, so therefore it goes to him. But me be neureha beit aviha, based on this part of the pasuk. It's the father's right to the money, okay, for therefore the naras kedushin. Ela bahafarat nidarim hu dichti. No, that's really focusing on the fact that the father at that point is a nara with kiddushin, no longer has total control to nullify her vows. Why? Right? Nidarim hu dichtiv. Why? Hachanami, here too, bahafarat nidarim hu dichtiv. Here too, we might argue that applies
That
to
the other pasuk is also
talking about absolution of vows. V'chitema nilef mine. And if you're going to say we would learn from that, mamona me'isura lo yalfina, the idea of learning financial aspects from something of laws of Isur, we don't learn. V'chitema nilef mikam knasa. So let's say we'll learn it from the issue of a penalty. Okay? Again, we ask, we indicate, mamona miknasa lo yalfinan. A knas is usually a one-time event penalty. Okay? And therefore we can't learn monetary benefits from that.
A separate category.
Okay?
You don't cross the
barrier. V'chitema, and if you want to say nilef mi boshet upagam, so let's say we'll learn it from other examples of what happens, that payments that go, okay, when the girl is raped or abused or something, okay, the embarrassment and the physical harm, that money goes to the father as well. So the Gemara tells us, Shani Boshet Upagam. All right, that's different Boshet and Pagam. Da'avuha Shayach Begavayu. Why? Because the father then is involved in it. In other words, he also, if there's embarrassment and hurt to the daughter, it has an impact on him as well. And so therefore he has a right to get that money. All right? Ela mistabra, but rather I'm going to go on a little bit on the next one. Ela mistabra, but it seems logical.
It's not from the pasuk. It's
right?
simply
The
logic.
chi ka mima'et, yitzia, the chavata ka mima'et. Okay? That we make one parallel between the father and the master and her releasing herself. That situation. Vahalo damya. Hi yitzia. Lahai yitzia. But the Gemara argues the exodus in one situation is not equal to the exodus in another situation. Hatam there, nafkala mirishut adon legamre. There, when it's regards to being a servant, she leaves his servitude, his mastership totally. Vahacha, here, akati michasra mesira lechupa. Here, he's still lacking because he does not have the opportunity to bring her to the chuppah. Vahafarat nidarim, right? Right. Miha nafkala mishuten. But here, nevertheless, in regards to absolving her vows, there is a complete loss for the father of his domain. D'tnan, why? Because we're taught elsewhere in a Mishnah, v'na'ara ha'me'urasa, a 12-year-old girl when she becomes betrothed, aviha uba'ala mafirin nidareha. Her husband, her father, and along with her fiance must be the ones. Okay, well, future husband.
No, she's an
Arusa.
husband.
Arusa.
But an arusa's, the man is her husband. He just doesn't have
Bia.
But
Still,
but he's
I'm
legally
not
to have
comfortable
sex
with
yet.
yes, but
He's
I
not a
won't like.
fiancé, he's a
Right?
husband.
All right, Mafirin Idareha, the two of them must nullify her situation vows. And we're going to stop there. That's where we'll pick up tomorrow. Okay. All right, tomorrow is a little bit longer, so we'll do the best we can. Of course. All right. Okay, Bob. Take care.
So the Gemara is longer.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Take care.